Before I start, see if we can. Yesterday when we finished, I finished with that slide of the little girl between the two phones, and afterwards we were talking. I remembered one of my students in Bible school that she was instructed to write a term paper on relating to authority. She was taking a class on relationships and authority. That's what it was, relationships and authority. And she struggled to communicate on written paper, and so she approached her instructor and said, "Is there a chance that I could draw you a picture instead of writing that essay, that term paper?" And the instructor was not quite sure about this, and he said, "Well, I'll tell you what, if you can draw me a picture that symbolizes a conflict in relationships, I will consider that for the term paper." How would you draw that? A conflict in relationships. Today we're going to be talking about, does the Bible have anything to say about relationships? And then I want to talk a little bit, it's going to focus primarily on social media today and how it affects our relationships. And some of the things the dynamics that may be coming into play that we may not be aware of. Some of them you might be. But how would you draw a conflict in relationships? And this is what she drew. And for your information, is a picture of someone holding a phone and they're manipulating with their two hands, but wrapped around their one hand and peering over the top of the phone is the crying eyes of a child seeking to gain the attention of their parent. Conflict in relationship, I think she nailed it. We face that. We have a relationship. We're supposed to have a relationship with our children, which we would all say we do. Do we have a relationship with our phone? What happens when there's a conflict between the two? Who wins? So I'd like to talk about relationships with each other. First of all, today we're going to start by looking at the scripture, because to me, again, if I just say this stuff to you, if I bring this up and don't lay the foundation from scripture, then you can just write it off. You still can write it off if you want to. But the reality is, I want to look at scripture. What does scripture have to say? And the scriptures say so much about how we're to relate to each other that we could have spent all week just looking at just that, just from scripture. And so what I'm doing is just giving you a teaspoonful. Go home and read it. It's been really good to me to evaluate some of the way that I relate to people by reading what does the scripture have to say. In John 13, 34 and 35, it says this: "A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another as I have loved you. By this will all men know that you are my disciples, if you have love one for another." And I look at this and I say, this is supposed to be the encapsulation of the way we relate to each other. Chester's been talking about the Anabaptist vision, and I agree with you. There's times in the past I got to kind of go, why can't we just say the Christian vision? Because isn't that what we're all supposed to be? But the reality is that word has become so warped and twisted and manipulated that what do you mean when you say Christian? Because the world has everything from gay and lesbian, active participating, to those martyrs who've died for their faith over in China right now. It's all Christian. Where's Christ in it? And so one of the things that God has given to the world as a sign of who the true Christians are to be us and the way we relate to each other. That is his sign. He's no longer here. He's no longer showing his love personally to Jesse. He's given you and me that responsibility to show his love to the world around us. And he says, I've given this commandment. This is not a suggestion. It is not just a good rule for life. This is a commandment. This is something we're instructed to do, is you love one another as I have loved you. Brothers and sisters, it is a sacrificial love. You cannot do this in your spare time. You cannot do this with spare emotions. It's going to cost you. It's going to cost you your time. It's going to cost you your comfort. Because when you love someone deeply, it means you also have the opportunity to be hurt deeply. It's love. It means a pulling together rather than a pulling apart. And this is something I think that is really, really key. Do I love someone else in another way that I'm trying to find ways that we can pull together well? You know, I didn't ask my wife if I could say this. Can I say this? To find out how she loves me or not? No. We've been married this fall to be for 24 years. And just a few weeks ago, she got up in the middle of the night and she went, I don't know if you opened the window, shut the window, I forget what it was, doesn't matter anymore. And I made a comment to her that was loaded with feeling. And she responded with hurt. And neither of us slept for the next 2 hours. We started crying together. It takes work, you know, and I realized that there was things that I was doing that was hurting her, and there was things that she was doing that was hurting me. And what happened is, it's so easy to allow the little things to start pulling us apart. Are we looking for ways to pull together? Are we looking for that? That is what it is. And this is how people are to be able to identify us. That the world, by this, all will know that you are my disciples, by the way you love each other. Can someone say that about you and me? That the world looks at, by the world looking at the way we relate to each other as a church. And you know some in the church you relate to better than others. And pick that one that you kind of is the Mento in your Coke, okay? Does the world see that relationship, and do they see me responding with love? Do they see, boy, there's something different about you? So we're to love each other is the first thing. And I apologize, I'm going to have to run through here because I want to make sure we get through this. We're also instructed to pray for each other. In Acts 12:12 it says, I got to give you the setting of this. So Peter was one of the leaders of the church. He went from being the one who denied Christ to being the one who spoke the harsh things on the day of Pentecost. You killed the Son of God. You crucified him and hung him on the tree. He went from being somewhat cowardly to being a bold lion for the faith. Now their lion has gotten locked up in jail, and very likely tomorrow morning is going to be dead. What did the people do? It says they prayed for him. They prayed all night for him. And this is something that burdens my heart, is when was the last time you and I cared so much about one of our brothers or sisters, and we saw the ache and the agony of their soul, we saw the wrestling that they're doing, and we were willing to spend our sleeping time that we crave on our knees in prayer. God saw that. And when he brought out Peter, he didn't take him outside the city gates and said, run for him. He brought him right to where the people were praying. And it says in Acts 12:12, so when Peter had considered this, he came to the house of Mary, the mother of John, whose surname was Mark, where many were gathered together praying in the middle of the night, praying for each other. Do we love each other enough to pray in the dark hours? Romans 1 verse 9 and 10 say, for God is my witness, whom I serve with my spirit in the gospel of his Son without ceasing. I make mention of you always in my prayers. Make a request if by some means now at last I may find a way in the will of God to come to you. Paul longed to come to Rome to strengthen the church that was there. I was just talking to my fellow minister Keith here, and he says, you know, in their family devotions, every morning they pray for every family in the church by name. That's dedication. That's love. That is something that is building the relationship that they have, because now his children are asking questions, you know, as they prayed for something that they may have heard in that meeting about that we were facing that day. Hey, how's your back doing? You know, or the young people were asking this question. Why? Because they prayed for it. What do you think that's doing for our relationship? It's helping it grow. 1 Timothy 2 says, first of all, then, I urge that all supplications, prayers, intercessions, and thanksgiving be made for all people. Men everywhere pray, lifting up holy hands without wrath or quarreling. This is, again, how we're supposed to do it. Now, I want to ask you a question. As you think about what goes on online and a lot of these forums, how much of that conversation would match this? That men everywhere pray, lifting up holy hands without wrath or quarreling. Think about it. What are we supposed to do? We're commanded to love each other. We're commanded to pray for each other. There's also something else that is a lot more difficult. We are commanded to confess our faults to each other. James 5:16 says, confess your faults one to another and pray for one another. Why? That you may be healed. That you may be healed. I struggled morally for many, many years, and it was a struggle between me and God, and occasionally I would talk to my Father. The victory only came when I was willing to be open. Not in a tawdry, not in a nitty-gritty sense necessarily publicly, but that people knew that I wasn't exactly who they perceived me to be. And you know the chains that are gone? All of a sudden, Satan can't beat you over the head with it anymore because everyone knows about it. And so you can say, no, I know that's not hidden anymore. And the amazing thing is, now that they know, guess what? They're able to pray better for me. They're able to call me up in the middle of the afternoon and say, Japheth, how are you doing? And all of a sudden I realized I wasn't standing alone anymore. I was standing with people that cared about me. I became a part of a brotherhood when I was open. I'll tell you, it's extremely vulnerable. There are times that people take what you say, warp it and twist it, and throw it back at you as a dagger. And it hurts. It really hurts. But I'll tell you what, the blessings that are gained from being open and being willing to confess what we have far surpass the pain that comes when those things happen. My wife had a little saying in her one photo album right over the time that she was going through her cancer. When she was wrestling with God, you know, am I ready to leave? And then finally she's ready to go meet God. And she's ready to die if this is what it's going to be. And all of a sudden the doctor comes back and says, well, we think we got all the cancer. We think you're going to be fine. She was already started to check out and prepare to see God. Now all of a sudden, heaven's doors were closed and she had to check back into earth. And it was hard because her heart was there. And she wrote in her book, it's worth the pain. It's worth the joy. It's worth it. And this is one of the things I think that's when we talk about a powerlessness in our church, I think is one of the reasons that we face this is because we sometimes are not willing to be open and to confess what we have. And that's why we're walking around with wounds that are not healed in our hearts. We're also to minister to each other's needs. In 1 John 3, 16 to 18, it says, by this we know love, that he laid down his life for us. We ought to lay down our lives for the brothers. But if anyone has this world's goods and see his brother in need, yet closes his heart against him, how does God's love abide in him? Little children, let's not love in word or in talk, but in deed and in truth. We're commanded to love each other, and it needs to have skin to it. It needs to have, it needs to be worked out. It needs to be demonstrated by the things we say and do. We have a young family in our church that the husband grew up in a dysfunctional home. The mother did too. They got married, and they're struggling. Recently, his sister brought charges against him from things that happened 22 years ago in their home. And after 22 years of living well within the law, never even so much as a speeding ticket, he was sentenced to 7 years in prison for what happened. And now here's a man who has 5 children. His wife left at home. And sometimes they're hurting. Sometimes they don't always respond in the right way. I got a phone call or a text message in the middle, or about 9 o'clock one night, saying, there's raw sewage running out underneath my trailer house. There's a pipe that has become disconnected. I have no idea what to do. What am I supposed to do? The next morning I had to go, and you go crawl into that, and you figure out how to put the pipes back together. And I had to have a talk with the Lord because I needed an attitude adjustment when I went over there that morning. I didn't want to be there. And this is what God brought me back to. Do you love your brother and sister? Do you love me? If you love me, this is the way to demonstrate it to your brothers and sisters. This is what we're commanded to do. I could have said as much of here in the next verse, James 2:15-17 says, if a brother or sister is naked and destitute of daily food, and one of you says to him, depart in peace, be warmed and filled, but you do not give them the things which are needed for the body, what does it profit? Thus also faith by itself, if it does not have works, it is dead. And I could have told her, I said, well, I'm sorry that you feel that way. Hopefully it'll all drain out if it gets full. May your pipes be fixed for you. I have to go to work. What if she felt the love of God? No. What if people have been able to see that in there? We're also commanded to sing with and to each other. Ephesians 5:18-19 says, and do not be drunk with wine, which is dissipation, but be filled with the Spirit. Now, it's interesting. You talk about relating to the drunk people. I find that drunk people, when someone starts drinking, they turn into one of three people. They turn into someone very morose, which is called a downer. They turn into someone very angry, or they turn into a hilarious person. They sing like there is nobody watching. They dance like they can't dance. You know, it's sad. I shouldn't laugh. I mean, there's sometimes, is it okay does God laugh sometimes? I've found myself laughing sometimes when I would haul someone that he got drunk on Listerine over to the soup kitchen, and oh, it was funny. But notice what it's saying here. Don't let our joy come from drunkenness. Rather, be filled with the Spirit, speaking to one another in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing and making melody in your hearts to the Lord. That's where it's supposed to come from. That's what's supposed to bubble from. And we're commanded to do that with each other. To sing, and I loved being here in the singing last night, you know, and that just cranks my engine, you know, because I can't wait till we're around in heaven, and I can sing, you know. I know some of yours. I can sing bass now. I'd love to be able to sing tenor. Those guys can just, whoa, they hit those notes up there, and I'm just down here alone. And then some of you guys, yeah, you want to swap, right? You know, exactly. I can't wait to do that. And you know what? We get a piece of that right now. We get a little piece of heaven when we gather together and we tune our voices, we tune our hearts to sing praise to God, because that's what we're doing in heaven. And every time we sing, that should be reminding us of where we're going. It's not just about the words, it's not just the melody, which is all part of it. It's about where are we going. Colossians 3:16 says this, let the word of Christ dwell in you richly in all wisdom, teaching and admonishing one another in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing with grace in your hearts to the Lord. Interesting that do you know what comes right before this? It's what we are to be filled with. When we put the fruits of the Spirit within us, then it says this, let the word of Christ dwell in you richly. God wants to be there. When we start practicing the spiritual disciplines of putting God's truths and God's practices in our hearts, Christ wants to be there. He says, come, let me be there. And then you can sing together, you can admonish each other, encourage each other. Will we let him use us to encourage each other in that? And one of the things it says in there, we're to admonish each other. Now, raise of hands, how many of you just really thrilled to be admonished? There's a verse in Proverbs, and I just spaced the first half of it. But the second half of the verse is this. Reproofs of instruction are the way of life. See, God, look at most of us, those of us who are parents with children, you know what it's like. When we correct them, is it because we really want to put them down a peg? No. We see them going, charging this direction. Hey, say, let's steer that a little bit. There's something here you don't want to hit. As corrections. All they know is they wanted to go there and you hindered them. What were you trying to do? You're trying to give them life. You're trying to help them. I mean, one person said, my job is to keep my boys from killing themselves until they turn 18 because of their ignorance, and then after that is their responsibility. You know, life. Do you want to live life? The reality is that there's going to be times that we all need reproof. Sometimes it comes even from our own children. I want to just say this here for what it's worth right now. I hope you know as I'm speaking these things about technology, and I think I've said before, I'm sitting in the pews with you. It was about 3 weeks ago, my son contacted me and he says, Papa, can I talk to you this evening? So we have this thing called happy hour at our house. It's the hour between when the children go to bed and mom and dad would go to bed. And as my children got older, I realized that there's times they need to talk. And somehow talking later in the evening is easier than in the morning or any other time during the day. And so when our children reach youth group age, we allow them to stay up and they spend that hour with us. And my children all know that if they want to talk to me personally, they can just simply put that oar in the water, and all the other children recognize, okay, time to leave, and they exit stage left. And so we sit and talk, and sometimes we'll talk till midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. They're wrestling through things. But tonight he said, Papa, can I talk to you tonight? Sure. He said, Papa, I hear you preaching these things. And I saw the goals that you wrote, and you have them over there on the fridge, but Papa, you're not living up to them. That stings. That stings deep. But I am so thankful that my children have the courage to come and say that. And I confess that to my son. And you know what? I've been working at that and doing that, working at better at that. It was encouragement to realize how easy it is to just to slip away from the goals and the glory of Jerusalem and so easily get drifted into the convenience of what's here. And my son, thank the Lord, helped me come backwards. It was a reproof, and I'm grateful for it. We're to admonish each other. It says we're to know each other. In 1 Thessalonians 5:12-15 says, and we urge you, brethren, to know those who labor among you and are over you in the Lord. This is talking about a relationship. And I'd love to ask my students this at Bible school. I said, if your bishop came up to you Sunday morning after church and said, hey, I was wondering if we could go out for coffee this week. How many of you would go, and what would you feel? And only about half of the students are going, maybe I would go. How would you feel? Terrified, you know. We put our shoes on one at a time every morning like you do too, okay? We're normal. Well, some of us are normal. But do you know them? Do you know their heart? Do you know your parents' hearts? Men, do you know the hearts of the other men at church? I remember one time I was thinking about leaving our church before I was married, and I said, I don't fit in here. There's no one I really connect with. And my dad asked me, he says, well, who are you connecting with? I said, there's nobody my age. Next person older than me was Dawson. And he had 5 children, 12 and under. And my next younger was my 3-year younger brother. And you know how well those relationships go. And I just struggled. And my dad said, who are you investing with? And he encouraged me to start going out. I started going out for breakfast or coffee with some of these men. I learned to know their hearts. Do we know each other? Do we share candidly with that? I could keep going on here. There's a lot of things that I want to do there, but the commands that are given there is to warn the unruly, to comfort the faint-hearted, to strengthen the weak, be patient to all, and don't give evil for evil. These are how we are to relate to each other. And so when I think of what the Bible says about relationships and how relationships are so vital to our faith, the biggest thing I see where technology touching that is in the area of social media. So just to give you a little bit about it, just so you know a little where I came from. I signed up for
Zanga.
Oh, that was back. That was Zanga was back there. I never had MySpace. I never had a MySpace, but I had a Zanga. I had a blog back when that was the day. And then Facebook came out. I never heard anything till my sister-in-law was there one time. What's Facebook? And kind of like, oh, and I found lots of my friends on there. I think I signed up in 2008. I quit Facebook in 2012, or 2020, excuse me. But online interactions has been a struggle for me. Just being straight up with it. I enjoy the interaction with people, and what I want to do is I want to look at some of the things that I have found that I see as struggles, as cautions. But I also want to look at the end, some of the positive uses we can use social media for. But again, it's one of those things, do we understand the fire with which we play? Do we understand what is happening? I'd like to start with a few truths and see if, can you agree with me? Do you agree with this? We are designed by God to crave relationships. Absolutely. That's from right there in the Garden of Eden. You know, we were created, Adam and Eve had close fellowship with God. They physically walked with Him each day. I just can't even wrap my head around that. Do you know what kind of a close relationship that is between such an omnipotent being and we mortal flesh? The relationship that was there. And if you want to see, and Adam and Eve, they enjoyed that fellowship with God and walked with Him daily. And then that relationship was broken. And if you want to see a little bit of what that might have felt like to Adam and Eve, watch someone who's going through a horrific divorce and see the rending of those hearts that are taking place. That is a picture, a small picture, I believe, of the ache of the Father's heart and the emptiness of Adam and Eve's when they realized that that relationship was no longer there. It was broken. The second truth I want us to say, can we agree with this? We often try to replace the God relationship with other relationships. There is a God-sized hole in each one of us, and ever since we left the garden, we've been trying to fill that with anything that we can control. And I say that last phrase intentionally, because what we want is we want a relationship that's on our terms. We want a relationship that we can limit the ability with which we can be hurt and the direction that we are going. And we look for those things. We look for it with money. We look for it with power. And that's what Adam and Eve really wanted. They didn't want God to have all the power. They wanted to have a little bit of say in this. They wanted to be like God. They wanted to have some control in this relationship. And that's what led them to being cast out of the garden. There are numerous things that will ease the ache of that emptiness for a period of time. But they will never fully erase the emptiness of the hole that is in our hearts, because if God is not there. As we look at social media, I believe one of the reasons this is such a powerful force in our society is that it mimics the relationships that God has designed, but has some significant flaws that we often ignore, or maybe sometimes we don't even recognize. And so when I look at this, I'm going to be looking at the problems I see with social media. One of the biggest things I'm going to say right up front is that social media is designed to play off our desire and our need for relationships. You know, I am not sure why my notes are not showing up here. Nope. Oh, I was looking wrong thing. You know, we have never lived in our human history has never lived in a time when we've been so connected and yet still so alone. We have so much ways of connecting with social media. Remember when COVID hit and they said, hey, well, at least we have FaceTime, we have Zoom. Isn't that a lovely platform? We have Zoom, we have videos, we have ways of still staying connected. Isn't that great that we live in this time? Let me ask you this. They did a survey in 2022 of young people ages 18 to 24. How many of them, what percentage of them seriously considered suicide during the summer of 2020 to the spring of 2021? What percentage do you think it was? 40? This is people in the prime of their life. These ones that grew up with technology, they had all these things. They were very connected. Most of them had plenty of friends online. But they were ordered to stay at home, and all they had at home was their devices to interact with. We said 40. That's low.
80.
Not quite.
70.
About 74% seriously considered suicide, and some of them actually attempted it. I think they questioned about 2,000 young people from all across the U.S. One of the most successful snares of the devil are crafted from cheap imitations of the beautiful things God has created. He hands us something. I talked about that yesterday. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that today because I have to keep moving. But think about how many people are more committed to their online relationships than their in-person relationships. Think about that. What that says to someone when you're there talking with them and all of a sudden their phone chirps. Whoop. Oh, sorry, I got to do this. Okay, what were we talking about? What did that just say?
You're not important.
That you're not as important as this other world that I'm living in. Now, we may not intend to say that, but that is what we're saying. That is what is being communicated. And so social media is designed to play off of that need for relationship, but it ends up being a cheap imitation for it. The second reason, the second problem I see with social media is that it creates false impressions. People never show their bad sides online, do they? Unless they're simply trying to ask for a pity party. And I've seen that, oh, my life is so terrible. Look what's happened to here. Look what's happened to there. And they really they're doing that. Let me ask you a question. And can I get a little feedback? What happens when you've had a terrible day and you log onto Facebook and you see the cool hunting trip that the guys are on, or the vacation that these other people are taking, or the wonderful game of volleyball that they had this past weekend? What emotion goes through your mind? It goes through you. Let me hear you.
I don't have that.
I don't have that.
Pity party.
Pity party? Poor me.
I don't follow them.
You don't follow them. Well, we're not signing them off. No, unfriend. What's it?
Jealousy.
Jealousy? Why do they get to have all that, but I don't? There's a big one. There's a huge one we're missing. But I know it's there.
Sometimes I feel disdain.
Disdain. Help me out there. What do you feel like? Can you express that?
It's from jealousy.
Okay.
They're jealous, and so I don't like that they're having fun, so I can disdain them for having fun.
Okay.
Well, you can tell yourself you're being fake, which kind of helps with that.
Yeah, they're just being fake. We don't, exactly.
What's that?
Yeah, tell them that they're just being fake. Tell myself they're just being fake, and it's not really the real thing, and you just ignore it.
You could say it's good for them, but it's not for me.
Yeah, the lucky blokes. It's good for them, but I don't have that life. What about depression? I think it's a huge one. In fact, they have found that the more people are online, the more they struggle with depression. Let me ask you, when you see all this stuff, does that call you higher? No. It makes us feel worse about that. Facebook was actually sued because they actually did an experiment. They were trying to figure out how can we get people to spend more time on our platform. And they said, do they spend more time when they see uppers, which have lots of thumbs up and happy and lots of lots of positive comments, or Do people really enjoy being angry? You know, and so they see all the sad crying downers. Which one do you think it was?
Downers.
It wasn't.
Angry.
It was the uppers. People will spend more time when they had a blend of funny and uppers than when they have downers. But do you know how they did that? They took a group of people, and you know, Jesse, you split them here this morning. If I took a group of, let's say all of the youth over here, all the barrier youth this afternoon, or this morning, and I took all of you, and I decided that we're going to try this. I'm going to send you most of the posts that have crying faces or angry faces, and I'm going to that's mostly what you're going to see in your feed. And they found that those people started using it less. But they got sued because there was some people got so depressed they actually had at least 2 known cases where they committed suicide. It's astounding what's happening. It's because of this false impression. Remember what I talked about yesterday in Ephesians? We are called to be children of light. We're to be bringing light into this darkness, not creating the depressing things that is out there. I gotta have to keep moving here because we're not going to get through this if we don't. Third problem I see with social media is social manipulation. Here's another one from Facebook. They were caught because they wanted to try and see how much can we influence what people think by the posts we show them. Now, Facebook creates no content. They create you've been warned by the Facebook committee, blah, 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 you know. They create that one, but they do not create any content. All they can do is curate the content for you that you receive. And so they picked a little unknown place over in Australia that had an election between 2 very different people. And the one person was projected to win by about a 3 to 1 ratio. And they started, you know what, we're going to try something. They started showing people only, in that district, that area, only showing them negative stories about the projected winner and hiding all the negative stories from the projected loser. And the loser won in a landslide. And again, Facebook was, someone found out about this, they said, hey, this is not right. And I'll tell them more about that later. And they said, something's not right here. And they went and figured it out. And Facebook was, again, sued successfully. They had to pay money for it. And they had their hands slapped. They said, you're not to be doing on that. But think about this now. What if Facebook doesn't want you to hear spiritual things? I don't know if I have this in my notes later, so I'm going to give it to you now because I think it fits right here. Just before I got off of Facebook, I did an experiment. I took one cute little picture of one of my girls and put it on my Facebook page, and I said, someone turned her snark full volume this morning. It was kind of, you know, one of those funny little faces children make. And I got something like 220 likes, comments, things like that on it. I waited for a couple weeks because I know it's about a 2-week period that, you know, that if you post too much, Facebook doesn't give as high a priority to your postings amongst your friends. By the way, that's for all you who take 32 selfies a day. That's why they're not seeing them. I'm teasing. I hope not. That's not here. But I waited 2 weeks and I took another picture. And on the bottom, in the picture, I actually put, it was even cuter than the other one of my little girls. And at the bottom, I said, the glory of a father is his children, or the glory of children is their father. And I said, I'm so grateful for this. How many likes? 12. 12 likes. And I know one of the ladies one of the customers of mine, she works at the bank, and I was in there at the bank, and I said, hey, did you see the cute little picture of my girl? And she said, yeah, boy, she looked snarky that morning. And I said, no, the other one I just posted 3 days ago. She goes, no, I didn't see that. What happened? There was scripture. It was hidden.
Did you have the chapter and verse on it? Or
No,
just the words?
just the words. Actually, no, I did have the chapter and verse. Yeah. But it was in the picture. It wasn't like in the post. It was in the picture. So what does that tell you about Facebook? They're scanning all your pictures. I'll get into that a little more later, but they're scanning all your pictures to look for what's in there. Because they want to know how, they're social engineering what we're seeing. And I look at it, this started creeping me out. What are we doing about that? Why is it that social media allows us to live vicariously online and do and say things we would never do or say in person? That bothers me. It's a social manipulation in there. By the way, let me ask you this. I'm not going to ask for a raise of hands here because this could be embarrassing. But you all know when I say Snapchat, what I mean, correct? You can either nod your head this way, okay? Snapchat? Okay. Do you know what it was created for? The whole purpose of Snapchat. It was created so you can live your social life online without any accountability. The whole purpose, for those of you who don't know what Snapchat is, you can send texts, you send pictures, and you can set the timer that this person only has X number of seconds. I don't have it, and some of you, I shouldn't ask who can tell me, but you only have so many seconds or whatever, you can view it once and then it's gone. That's why they have a picture of a ghost on their logo. It goes, it's gone. And so the whole purpose when they're pitching it was so that you could say the things about your boss that you want to when you're out with your friends, and your boss will never be able to see that on your Facebook page. It's gone. Well, do you know what it's actually doing? It's creating a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde situation. How many of you know that book? Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is an old classic where Dr. Jekyll was a very well-known, respected doctor, and he found a secret potion. It's fiction. He found a secret potion that would turn him into something else, into a Mr. Hyde. And Mr. Hyde was a wicked man. He delighted in doing all the evil things that Dr. Jekyll was not allowed to because of his rank and station. But as time went on, Dr. Jekyll was not able, as he started doing this more and more often because it was fun, he found that he could not stay Mr. Hyde, or Dr. Jekyll. He would start drifting back into, his shape would start changing back into Mr. Hyde without taking the potion. And eventually, it killed him. Or he killed himself. The result of Dr. Jekyll dabbling in the forbidden is that it eventually overcame him. God didn't create us to live in dualism. And we kept using that term. Do you all know what that means? Dualism is when I say one thing in public and live another thing in private. When I say this is what I do, but then this is what I do instead of what I say. Two different realities, okay? God didn't design us to live that way. And the more we play with the forbidden, the harder it will be to keep it hidden. One side will win. And so when I hear a lot of young people saying that in my class, they have Snapchat, and they're struggling, with this because it's, well, all my friends are on it. Satan doesn't care what bait he puts on the hook, as long as you swallow the hook. But sometimes we don't think about what they're actually doing. I must keep moving here. Another problem with social media is the invasion of privacy. Let me ask you a question. How does Google pay for Gmail?
Selling your information.
Okay. What information?
Everywhere you visit online, your online usage, shopping places, age demographics, everything.
Yep. That's exactly right. They scan every single email that you put in there. They scan all your documents in your Google Drive, looking for any information that they can use either to market you or to market one of their products to you. If you don't believe me, next time you get a plane ticket, get the confirmation sent to your Gmail account, and then go over to your Google Calendar. It will pop up everything over that on that calendar. It automatically does it. How are they doing it? They're scanning your information. And then they sell it to people like me because I advertise with Google.
How do you pay for it?
How do I pay for it?
So they sell it to people like me.
Right. Okay. So let me give you an illustration here. We have a handy quilter event every year, and I want to spend my money connecting my ads with the only people who will come to that event. There's not a lot of ladies that are going to be ready to drop $25,000 on a quilting machine. Okay, but they are out there. And so how do I do that? Well, here's what I do. I go on there and I look for people who have visited these websites, APQS, Gammo, Grace, Knolting, all these other ones, my competitors. If they visited this website in the last 9 months, target them with my ad.
You tricky man.
I know.
Wow, privacy.
I also go, I say, I want them to be 55 or older. I want them to have a budget or an approximate income of X number of dollars. How do they know that? Because they track your spending. They know what you're spending online. I also can say, you know, I have a big competitor down there in Minneapolis. I can draw a geofence around their store and say, if they have gone into that store in the last year, hit them with my ad. And it's getting so precise that if you have a big mall or something like that, you like a Walmart or something like that, I can even draw, if I wanted to target someone in a certain section of Walmart, what area in that store they've been in.
Japheth, you're amazing. That little boy that didn't want to talk to me.
But it's scary. It's scary because that's where they're going with it. And you know what? You know why it works? Because it's very effective. For my event 3 years ago, I spent $300 on ads, and we had $300,000 in sales. Try and find any other place where I can spend $300 in advertising and have any kind of returns like that. Why? It's your information. It's your information they're giving. You know, and back during COVID, do you know some of you are here from Canada? The Canadian police and the people were actually actively looking at where are cell phone pings gathering that are not normally there, for looking for people who are gathering for church that are not supposed to be. It's an invasion of privacy. Now, some of that is that there. They also know, by the way, how many use Google Maps? I use Google Maps, so I'm okay. Did you ever notice that sometimes they take you on an obscure road because it's faster? Why?
Probably keeping you around from something else.
No, it's actually not. It's
You're on traffic congestion.
sometimes.
Fuel efficient,
What's that?
more fuel efficient.
More fuel efficient. There's worldview coming in. Okay.
But they want you to go back and mess around on your phone to figure it out.
Okay.
They want you to stop and shop.
Throw it out the
They want you to stop and shop somewhere. Okay, there's something else that's actually much more germane to this, and I found this out up in Highway 64 in Minnesota. They said that it would take me 2 hours to drive this route, or 2 hours and 2 minutes. And it was a straight shot. There was no other traffic, really. It was dead. I ran the speed limit. It took me 2 hours and 15 minutes. What was happening? When you're using Google Maps and you're going down the road, it's tracking how fast you're going. And all the locals know that the police don't monitor that road very much. So they just, down the road they go. And Google says, hey, here's a faster way. All the people are driving faster here. Well, let's send you on this way.
Tells you where the police are, too.
It does, and exactly, because they've got it now. Now, one more thing. I'm going to run out of time here. Maybe I'll have to finish this tomorrow. I don't know. But how many of you have ever taken a picture of your cute little children in their jammies or something like that in their bedroom? You ever take a cute little picture of your children, your grandchild in their jammies, just smiling? Hey, can you take a picture of them? Do you have location turned off on your phone?
Yes.
Do you have location turned off on the camera?
Yes,
Okay. Did you know there was such a thing?
yes.
If you do not and you upload that picture, I can go and download that picture, pull the meta file out of it. It gives me the lat long exactly of where that picture was taken. As long as you have a good signal, you could tell what corner of the house your daughter's bedroom is. Okay? An invasion of privacy. I strongly encourage you, turn off the location tracking of your phone. If you've ever wondered, how? Did you ever go to Google Maps and you start seeing pictures that were taken in the area? Well, how did they get there? Because people took pictures in the area and it automatically located where they were at and uploaded them and said, here's pictures of people took from this area. I got to keep moving. Social media. The fifth problem is it's designed to be addictive. The whole way we scroll and it has changed our thinking. Most people cannot concentrate on something for more than about 10 to 15 seconds. Most news articles are saying that if you read past the first paragraph, you're one of the strange ones. That's why they often have all the ads. You got to click here to read more. Why? Because most people haven't even reached that point. That's the whole point of it. But it's designed to be addictive, to keep you scrolling. I want to talk here a little bit about games. Someone asked me yesterday, what kind of games are you playing when you're spending 40 hours a week playing games? You know what? Games and social media are designed to keep you there longer. And how many of you have Ticket to Ride as a train game? How many of you have played it in the last 6 months? Okay, how long have you had it?
On the phone, brother, or are you talking about?
A board game. A board game. Okay? Have you ever noticed that when you first get a game, you play it a lot because it's a lot of fun. You look for people to come over to play the game with you, and after a while it gets back on the closet, and then the children play with it and lose half the pieces, and pretty soon you just throw it out because it's never played anymore, correct? It's the same way with gaming online. You may start out playing Tetris, you may start out playing, Blockus or Candy Crush or something like that, but you get bored with it. And I started out by playing very innocuous games. But eventually you get bored and you move on and you move on until you're playing role-playing games where you're actually shooting other people, where you're actually taking oaths, and that will allow you to overcome demons and things like that in labyrinths and things like that. It's just a click of a mouse, just like it was a pinch of snuff for what was her name? Perpetua. It's just a little piece of snuff. It doesn't really matter. It's just clicking this little thing. It's all designed to keep you in there. But one of the things about social media, the reason I want to bring this up in gaming now, is that gaming has merged with social media. Because now people are playing games together. They're logging in, and it shocks me to hear this, but I'm hearing that there are young guys' youth groups that sometimes they'll get together and they'll form a team in someone's house to play Fortnite and see how far they can get. And they form their own team, and then they go out and try and vanquish the bad guys and try and make sure that no one can vanquish them. Call of Duty is a huge one. It's a war game. And one of the biggest strengths about that is that you form your allegiances. You form, what's the term they call them? You form your army, basically, and you stick together. And there are these people, they've traded weapons, they've traded money to help each other out, and you form bonds with those people. And I know of one young man that he had a loving father. He spent time with his father. In fact, his father knew that he was struggling and said, "Son, would you like to get up in the morning, have devotions with me at 5:30 in the morning?" And his son said, "Yeah, he would." But over time, he got involved in gaming, and his father tried to warn him about that, but he wouldn't listen to him. And it came to the place that one night he told his dad, he said, "Dad, I trust that lady out in Washington that helps me out. I trust her way more than I ever trust you." What happened? That allegiance was broken. That relationship in person was broken because of what he had been building up online with someone he had never met. And so I want you to understand that the craving that you feel for it is designed to be there by the very people that are seeking your soul. The devil knows what bait to use on the hook that he dangles to you. For some people it's games, sometimes it's social media, but the other thing is also I want to just bring in here is movies. You know, I don't think any of us would ever want to walk out this door and stand here and watch a gunfight happen between two men where people were killed. Would we? But why is it somehow okay when it's on our screen? Why none of us would go and want to look in the bedroom window of a couple and watch what God has hidden. But somehow if we watch that on our phones, it's different? Is it? Sooner or later, we're going to be what we start out with does not seem like much. But if it is designed to work you into that which will dry up your soul and destroy your soul in hell, sooner or later we're going to be doing the very things we thought at one time we would never touch. Somehow we think we can watch some things on our devices, and then we find out later that its fire has seared our soul. It's something that concerns me, and I'm going to run through this real quick. Another problem with social media is that it cheapens communication. I got to do this real quickly. My friend Mike Fisher and Mike and Michelle Fisher, dear friends of ours, they have 12 children, we have 11. We're both crazy. Everyone knows that. So we just, when we get together, it's fun to talk. And the thing is, we both have hearts after the Lord. And so it was, whenever we'd stop to visit them in Bedford, we would stay up till 2 or 3 in the morning, even when we were leaving at 5 or 6 to go on our next trip. We just wanted to be together and visit. It was precious, precious time. And then we both found each other on Facebook. We were both on Facebook. And for the next year and a half, we would communicate back and forth a little bit. And then we said, when we're going through, we got to stop and visit them again. So we stopped, and we couldn't hardly communicate. I mean, I'd say, hey, did you hear we did this? Yeah, I saw that picture. Yeah, oh, okay, yeah. And he said, did you hear that we went camping? I said, yeah, I saw those pictures from out west. Yeah, okay, that's good. Dead air. You know, what's interesting is that the little things along life, God designed to be segues to the heart, that as we dialogue about those things, it opens up ourselves up to be able to communicate about the deeper things. But if we don't have those things, it's really hard just to go, dive down to the deep stuff. It doesn't happen that way. And what had been happening is all year, we had been eating the maraschino cherry and the whipped cream off the top, and we never were able to get down to the heart issues of where it was. It cheapens communication. There's much, much more I could go on that. I need to move on here. Another problem with social media is that it often speaks life to the things that we need to die to. And I'm going to run past here a little bit. I'm going to try and get done here in a couple minutes, or in about 10 minutes. But please, if you need to run, get your children, whatever, I understand. You know, when I was at Bald Eagle serving, that's where I struggled so much. It was they're new, they were getting started, and so they did not have all their policies in place that they do today. And so I don't want this to be a reflection on Bald Eagle at all. I love them dearly. We have other people that have been there, and this has not been their case, thank the Lord. But when my house of cards fell, when the board of directors said this young man needs psychiatric counseling, and my dad said, no, he needs to come home. He needs to learn to be under authority. And my dad asked me, are you willing to come home now? And I walked down the trail that night. Chief L.A. Laverne had just come, and he was there about 3 months at that point. And I was, why do I have to die? Why do I have to give this all up? And there was a wrestling in my soul. I was at a fork in the road, and whichever way I took, I knew there was going to be no going back. But I was all alone. It was me and God that were doing that. And I can tell you with certainty that if I had had Facebook back then, I would not be here today, and I don't even know if I'd be a Christian today. Because what I have seen is that when someone's going through that thing, they vent themselves. Why do I have to do this? There is always a voice out there saying, hey, you got to stand up for yourself. You got to start being a man, make your own decisions. And I would have had someone encouraging me to do that which I knew I ought not. Do you guys know who Harvey Yoder is? Harvey Yoder wrote many, many books. Do you know he's gay? He came out as gay a number of years back. And back before, when I was still on Facebook, I happened to look him up because there was a book that was being written that we knew of, and I connected to him through that way. And I went and looked him up, and I was shocked to see that my aunt and him were close friends. And they were dialoguing almost daily, and I was like, how in the world did they meet? My aunt left the Mennonite church 50 years ago, 60 years ago almost. Her son married his boyfriend here a few years ago in their backyard, and she sang for the wedding. And I was like, man, how in the world? And how did they find each other? She heard him talk, she must have searched or something, him talking about how Mennonites don't want to accept you once you're gay. And she found that, and she started commiserating with him about how unchristian these people are, because they think they know better. And these two formed a bond. What is happening online? And young people and older people, I'm going to say this candidly, please hear my heart. But you all have known other people dear to you have turned and walked away from the faith. Am I correct? And they post those first few pictures of their freedom online. And the people who know better, the people who are supposed to be admonishing them to call them back, are saying, oh, you look so beautiful. I wonder if God is going to hold them accountable for their souls. The ones who leave those comments, because they encourage them to go in the ways they ought not. Got to keep moving. What are some of the positive things I see because you're saying, well, is there any good in social media? Well, there can be. I'm going to look at three things here real quick. I think we can use it to enhance real communication with real life people. My son is in Faith Mission Home right now, and so we have him on our family chat. So if we're, going out to church and hey, we're leaving here, who's in your car? Who's in mine? We have two cars, so we have to do that. Saying, hey, my wife will say, hey, it's zucchini souffle for supper, and everyone goes, oh no, I'm just kidding. She saves my bacon that way, literally. But it's a way for doing that. There's also another side of it. One night, as I was having a late night discussion with one of my children, and it had not gone well. There was a struggle that was taking place, and my child did not want to surrender. And I remember going to bed at 11:30 at night and just saying, God, why? Why is this happening? Why did you have me take this fruitless talk tonight? And all of a sudden, just before I went to put my phone over in the dresser, it buzzed. And it was a little text message that said, where in the Bible does it say it's wrong to commit suicide? And the battle was on. And for the next 2 hours, I pled for that soul. And praise the Lord, they're still alive today. But I knew that person. They'd been to a youth rally that I'd been at before. They'd taken my number down off my slide, and they had saved it in their phone. And they called me in that dark time. Another good sign of social media is communication in times of crisis. I remember when Val's were over in Thailand, Matt and Heather Critchfield were living in their house, and all of a sudden I got word that their house burned down in the middle of the night. And everyone was saved, it was fine. But all of a sudden, we were able to get the word out. And through that, there was a lot of people able to help donate funds and find out how they could be there. I think that's a good use of social media. How can we help each other? How can we pray for each other in times like that? Third thing I see as a positive of social media is that we can use it to create connections with the unsaved around us. Matt and Jamie live just down the hill from us, and back when I was still on Facebook, we were friends with them. They have a 3-stall garage. They converted one of it into a man cave. It's a bar. It's got 3 big screen TVs around it. They have a bar there. They have parties there. It's loud. And they watch NASCAR every Sunday. And my wife and I, we would walk around the block sometimes, and they would come out to call off Blue, their dog. But I'd never really stopped to spend a lot of time talking with them. But we'd visit with them, and they knew us, and we knew them. And but then I saw on Facebook she had posted that her dad had died. My wife and I said, we need to go talk to them. And we walked down, and I said, Jamie, I don't know what to say. But I can only pray that our Heavenly Father will comfort your hearts during the loss of your dad. And she says, sometime I want to sit down and have a talk with you because I'm not very happy with God right now. She said, I don't want to be. I don't like what it does inside of me. But I want to ask some questions. Now that I'm not on Facebook, I don't have that connection anymore. He got psoriasis of the liver. He never drank anything but Pepsi or liquor. And now he has a new liver, but he dare not ever touch either one of those again. And so the doors stay shut. They stay in their house, and we walk past, and they're not out there. And I don't have this connection. But to me, it's not worth the manure for that quarter. I'm just saying, it is a positive use. I was hoping to have a little time for questions this morning, but I don't. But I'm going to put my phone number and my email up there because I know that there's sometimes it's easier to ask a question later than here in front of everybody else. If you want to text me, and my phone is not here, I only carry with me in the afternoons here because I'm trying to discipline myself in that too, to take a break. But you email me, and or you call me, or you text me, and I'll do my best to answer it. I'm going to turn it back over to you, brother.